Welcome everybody to day 17 of this fantastic book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. We finished chapter 10. So today we will be doing chapter 11. Amor, Amor. That night, charged up by all that happened in the meetings with Alexa and Charles, I worked late. In fact, I worked till long after dark, making notes for the meetings the next morning with Charles and the team. I also sent an email to Alexa to check on Joseph's availability for meeting with us within the next few weeks. Time raced by. When I remembered to check the clock, it was 2 hours past the time I told Grace I'd be home. I considered calling, but figured she'd be in the bed, sound asleep. So I decided not to disturb her. On the way home in the car, I noticed it was going on 11. When I walked in the house, I found Grace sitting alone in the dimly lit living room. She was in her pajamas, reading by a single lamp beside her chair. The moment I greeted her, I knew something was wrong. She silently set aside her book, walked up to me, took my hand, led me over to the sofa, and told me gently to sit down. I sat, half expecting her to announce that someone had died or that she was leaving me. She leaned forward in her chair, elbows on her knees, gazing into my eyes in a way that made it quite clear that this was going to be a serious talk. Ben, she said, you've got to tell me what's going on with you. Just as I had done so many times before, my first instinct was to shrug it off. I worked late, I told your secretary, and I considered calling but figured you were asleep. It's not about that, you know it isn't. She fixed me with a stare that told me she wasn't going to back off. There's been a lot of pressure at work, deadlines coming up way too fast, but I think there was some real progress today. I knew I was waffling, but to tell the truth, I was scared to death. Grace shook her head slowly, pushed and asked, what is it you need right now? For a moment, I was speechless. Wasn't this the very question I asked myself about Charles? What does the other person need and want? What was she reading my mind? Or had she somehow seen Joseph's top 12 questions for success? What do I need? I echoed nervously. At this point, I'm not even sure. I wasn't lying to her. I really didn't know. Here's what I've been noticing, Grace began. Not long after you took this job, our whole relationship changed. You changed. I began to worry. It was something about me. Did you suddenly feel that marrying me had been a mistake? Had I done something that offended or hurt you? I held up my hand. Oh, Grace, it isn't anything like that. That's what I realized after studying the choice map, she said. You know what became clear? We've both been going down the judger path. I know. I have been judging myself and you, and I see you being in judger too. I had been bursting to tell her about my breakthrough with Charles, how it had already changed so much for me at work. But all I could say was that I agreed with her and that I had been looking carefully at how my being so judger affected me and everyone around me. I am filled with questions about us, Grace continued, but until this afternoon, my questions were mostly judger ones. Then I started looking for things I might do or say to keep up from getting stuck in the judge's pit. This is really hard for me to hear, I said, bowing my head. I guess there's no easy way to say this, no other way through it. Grace suddenly looked as pale as a ghost. Please let this not be what I'm thinking, she said, her voice shaky and fearful. What? An alarm went off in me. All sorts of possibilities raced through my mind. She huddled in her chair, staring at me. I took a deep breath. Wait, what are you thinking? You don't think. It's all the long nights you spend at the office, all the excuses for not coming home, failing to call even to let me know where you were, not having time for me. For us, she paused. Well, Grace, I swear it's nothing like that. There was an extremely difficult moment for me, for both of us. It had never occurred to me that she might have interpreted my long hours at work like this. I shook my head slowly, partly because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and partly to assure her I was not having an affair. I would never do something like that, Grace. I gave a lot of thought to what I was going to say next. There is something I want to tell you that I'm finding very difficult to say. I hope you won't end up hating me for it. Maybe even as much as if there'd been another woman. I guess I was getting a bit emotional at that moment. My face felt hot and my eyes were threatening to tear up. I had no idea what Grace's reaction would be in the next few moments. I was afraid that she might walk out on me when I told her the truth about my failures at work. I didn't exactly tell you the truth about Joseph and how I got the choice map I began. As I saw it, I had to choose between going to him for executive coaching or handing in my resignation. Your resignation? Is that what this is all about? Oh, Ben, I'm so sorry. For months now, I was afraid I wasn't cut out to be a leader. Working with this team has been a real bust, I told her. And if this job didn't work out, well, I was afraid of how it would affect you and me. Frankly, I was afraid you'd think I wasn't good enough for you. We were both silent for several moments. Then she asked quietly, when did you first realize things weren't working out in your new job? A few weeks into it, I confessed. At first, it was great. I really thought I could handle the team thing. Then I was hit with one challenge after another. I just couldn't manage until I felt like I was drowning. Wait, she interrupted. You had all that going on for all this time and you never told me about it? You're angry, Grace, aren't you? I just knew it was going to turn out like this. I'm really sorry, but I think things are turning around for me. In fact, I'm sure of it. Wait a second, Grace said. Back up. You knew what? What did you think you were going to turn out like this? Do you know why I'm angry at you? Are you sure you know why? Of course I do. For screwing up at this job. No, 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 that's not it at all. She practically shouted this at me. Then for what? I asked. Totally taken aback. Had she found some offensive that was even worse? Something I didn't even know about yet. I racked my brain for an explanation. What I'm upset about is that you've kept your problems a secret from me. You're my husband, and you didn't let me know about something this important for both of us. I had every intention of telling you, but only after I got things rolling again. I was pretty sure I could get a new job right away and things would get better, and you would never have to know. In other words, you were going to continue covering this up and keeping me in dark. Suddenly she wanted to punch me. Good grief, Ben, how could you be so clueless? I stared back at her like she was a stranger. I really didn't know what to say. It happens at times that, the one key factor of sharing or communicating with your partner is so important and so essential because, there's a lot of things that is going inside of you and you want somebody to talk to it, to talk about it. But just that, you know, you might sound like a loser, you might look like a loser, might just hurt your ego. You don't share. And I've been in that space a couple of times. I would say more than a couple of times, a lot of times. But the whole question is one mind and two minds. What is better? Because you are so caught up in that situation, you are not able to detach yourself and see from a higher perspective of what the actual situation is. And strong chances are that you are in that judger's pit with judger questions, and you cannot see that, what else is possible, because you are in that pit and you're unable to move out. It is only and only when you start communicating, when you start asking yourself first the switching questions and try to take a look at things from an overview, from an observer perspective, that you actually get to detach yourself from that situation and look at whatever else are the possibilities that you can have. And it's very important to have a confidant in your life. It could be your partner, it could be your very close friend, or it could be also a very close employee or a subordinate. Because till the time you do not detach yourself from that situation and get into the observer mode, you will not be able to see the judge's pit so clearly, or you will not be able to analyze the situation so carefully. Because अगर मैं एक पिट में हूं तो मुझे क्या दिखेगा, what is around the pit. बट अगर मैं एक ओवरव्यू में हूं तो मुझे क्या दिखेगा, what is beyond the perspective of the pit, what is in a bigger gambit, what are the other options available, what are the other possibilities available. So I would not be stuck in that judge's pit with that box of excuses to justify myself, to judge others, to blame others. Rather than that, I would be in a place of overview where I will be able to observe everything and actually access the box of possibilities of what is available. And it's very important for you, whoever is part of this book reading, or whoever is seeing this recording, or whoever is going through this book, is to have a confidant in your life where you can discuss your issues beyond the judgment of what the other person will say or how the other person will judge you. It is just taking another perspective from a point of overview in order to analyze the situation in a better and a collaborative manner rather than in a singular manner. Not necessarily you will agree to it, but जो भी आपके अंदर आपको परेशान कर रहा है, that will get out of your system. And once that goes out of your system by way of saying it to other or writing it to the other person, you will become lighter. And with that lightness, you will be able to elevate above that judge's pit and get to that point of overview where you will be able to observe and see things from a broader point of view. I stared back at her like she was a stranger. I really didn't know what to say. Listen to me, she said. You better get what I'm about to say, or we are never going to make it. I want you to share what's real with me, your troubles, your doubts, your victories, all of it. I need you to. That's such an important part of marriage for me. That's what helps me feel connected. When I'm having trouble at work, I talk it over with you, don't I? Sure, I guess you do. I never thought about it much. Do you remember what I asked you when you came in tonight? Yes, you asked me what I needed. You haven't yet answered me, she said. I want you to right now. My jaw dropped and I just stared into Grace's eyes for a long time. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe it was just seconds. But those moments are imprinted in my mind forever. What do you need? These 4 words, said with so much loving care, were like laser beams cutting through a stone wall for me. What I want, I began. I guess if I'm being totally honest right now, I want to tell you everything that's been happening to me and not let my fears stop me. I paused to check out Grace's expression before continuing. She was smiling, but there was something else in her face that I couldn't quite read. In spite of that, I had to press on. I've had to confront my own limitations, I began. Working up my courage, I spent way too much time in Jajar and have made a lot of assumptions, hurtful ones, about myself as well as others, people. All of this has caused major problems at work. And one of the toughest parts I've had to face is that, well, there's more to life than being the answer man. I've got a huge amount to learn. At least now, I've got some better choices thanks to our friend Joseph. At that point, I poured out the whole story of what I had gone through the past few months, how I'd been scared to death, that if I didn't succeed in this new position, Alexa would conclude that I couldn't make it at QTech. There had been so many days I felt like a loser that I didn't dare admit it. I was sliding faster and faster into the judge pit. When I got to the end of my story, Grace came over and sat close to me and draped her arms around me. I love you very much, she said. I love you even more because of all that you've just shared with me, but promise me that you'll never hold out on me again. Promise. It's not going to be easy, I told her. Habits are hard to break. Besides, at work, I've learned that you don't get ahead by whining. You're not whining. There's a huge difference between being a crybaby and being honest. We should always be open to asking each other what's going on and feel safe about telling the truth. Let's remember we are in this together. I repeat, very powerful line. There is a huge difference between being a crybaby and being honest. We should always be open to asking each other what's going on and feel safe about telling the truth. Let's remember we are in this together. There it was again, creating the room for people to ask questions openly and contribute to each other. This conversation was taking the breakthrough I'd had at work to a whole new level. Did I fully understand it all yet? I didn't. But what I did see quite clearly was that Joseph's methods worked as well as home as they did at work. I don't remember the exact words I used, though I do remember telling Grace how much this breakthrough with her meant to me. I thanked her for asking the questions she had, for listening to my problems, and for patiently working together through a very difficult time. I felt Grace's arms around me. She kissed me gently on the lips. In that instant, I knew something important had changed, not just between Grace and me, but in the whole way I looked at the world. As we headed for the stairs that night, our arms were still around each other, making it difficult to walk. We laughed as we stumbled comically on the first step. I told her we'd never make it to the top entwined like this. She smiled playfully, but we could try. We kissed again, and I suddenly got serious. Can I ask you a question? Anytime, Grace said, with a sparkle in her eyes, just anytime at all.